Hey YouTube, I'm out in the shop today and I thought I'd take some time and make this video on Mig Welding or Flux Core welding, which is what I do, and take the time to explain what a Mig welder does. Now, with a Mig welder, there's wire, there's gas involved, and there's an arc. Now, how do you get that arc? Well, when you get your MIG welder, you get two things on it. A MIG gun and a ground clamp. Okay. Now, the MIG gun has a trigger on it. And as soon as you pull the trigger, the arc ignites. It's struck. You strike an arc. And it feeds the wire. So all you have to do is run a bead. You don't have to. That's why MIG welding, everybody, when they start welding, if they want to get into MIG welding, because it's fairly simple. It's very easy to do. Anyway, like I say, the arc is struck. The wire is fed through the gun and out into the weld puddle. Okay, now you're running the bead. Okay. Now you're running a bead. Now, in order for you to get an arc struck, and a good arc, you have to have what I said earlier, the ground clamp grounded to the metal you're welding, or near the metal you're welding. If you do not have the ground on the metal you are welding, you will not get an arc. There's no way possible you will not strike an arc. It's just as simple as that. But anyway, with MIG welding, what MIG welding stands for is gas metal arc welding. Now, what kind of gas do you have to have? Well, you either rent or buy a welding bottle. There's different cubic feet, which means how tall the cylinder is. There's 20 cubic foot, 40 cubic foot, 80 cubic foot, 125 cubic foot, and 250 cubic foot. And it just goes on, you know. I don't know how big exactly you can get your cylinders, but you can get them pretty big. And in that cylinder is a mix of shielding gas. Now, what that gas does is shields the weld, the puddle, the molten puddle that you're making with your MIG gun. It shields it from any contaminants like rust, dirt, paint, the air itself. Air can contaminate a weld. Now, what you need as far as gas, you need a mix of 75% argon and 25% CO2. And CO2 is carbon dioxide. And it's a non-flammable gas. It's pretty harmless unless you basically don't, I guess, like tip the cylinders over or get one of the cylinders on their sides, or just basically breathe the argon in, because it will seriously screw up your lungs and you'll have a whole new set of problems there. But anyway, if you don't want to weld with gas, there is a solution. But I forgot something. On the top of the welding cylinder, there's two gauges. There's a flow gauge and a pressure gauge. Now, a flow gauge tells you how much gas is flowing, like per cubic feet. Basically, for most home shop jobs or just repairs, A gas flow of 20 to 30 cubic feet per hour is basically all you need. 40 is probably the most that you would ever use. But anyway, if you don't want to weld with gas, because sometimes it can be a hassle, I don't weld with gas because I just can't afford a whole setup right now. So I have what is called a Flux Core welder. Now, what is Flux Core? It's basically the same principle as MIG welding, only without gas. Like I said before with MIG, and this applies in Flux Core as well. You have your torch, and your wire is fed through the gun and to the weld puddle. But what the wire is made out of carbon steel, and it has a special flux coating on it to shield the weld from any contaminants, similar to a stick electrode. Basically, flux core welding is like stick welding, only without the stinger and the rod, and it's a lot simpler now. But I must warn you, I did it just because I couldn't afford a whole MIG setup. Flux core wire and MIG wire. Flux core wire is very, very expensive. A 10-pound spool is like $66 where I live at my Lowe's. It's $66. But compared to MIG wire, you can get a 10-pound spool of copper MIG wire at Tractor Supply for, I think, $30 if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, MIG welding, flux core welding, stick welding, TIG welding, whatever type of welding you're doing, you have to have eye protection because it creates UV rays, which is very harmful to your eyes. It'll blind you. It's nothing to screw with. Basically, you have to have eye protection. Because once your vision is gone, it's gone. But anyway, that's the basic principles. All you do is basically pull the trigger and basically just run a bead. But there's things you gotta do before you can just weld. You can't think if you're watching this video, this guy by welder and you can weld. You have to do your research. You have to figure out what kind of machine you want, how much money you want to spend on a machine, what kind of projects you're going to be doing. Anyway, certain welders, like, certain welders, I just have a 115 household welder. That's basically all I have. With that, my welder can do up to 3/16 steel, which ain't bad. Now, bigger welders such as 220 plugs can do bigger stuff. Now, if you overexceed your welder, you're gonna pop a breaker, and yeah, you're just gonna have to go to the breaker panel and reset a breaker. So I wouldn't recommend overdoing your welder or going over its duty cycle, because basically after a while you'll just destroy your welder and you'll be out however much you spent on your machine. Anyway, as far as helmets, we'll go into that. I'll make another video on what you should look for, what you should get, where to get a good deal on a helmet. But basically, that's it. You just pull the trigger, the arc is struck, you run a bead, and you basically have to have a certain amount of wire stick out. Your wire in your gun can't be so long. Now there's different wire sizes too. Like I run an 035 Flux Core Lincoln wire. Here's what I run, and there's 024, 030, 035. There's all different wire sizes, so you'll have to pick the one for what kind of job you're doing. 035s for like thicker metal. 024 and 030 is kind of for like thinner steel. But anyway, that's basically it. I'll go make another video about helmets and safety protection. But please rate, comment, and subscribe.